Hey, Alan.
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good to talk to you
Where
again.
you calling from?
I'm calling from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Where
right.
you will be coming in about 3 weeks.
Right, absolutely, yeah. No, they didn't have the guy that was putting, that wasn't with the normal guy that does it, and they didn't tell me where you were calling from. So.
Well, this place that you're going to be playing, last time you played in this area, you played at Montage Mountain in Scranton in the summer on the Slang Tour.
Right.
But this time, you also played out here about 6 years ago for Adrenalize out at the Harvey's Lake. I don't know if you remember that amphitheater. We're sitting on the side of a lake.
Yes, I do actually. That was probably one of many where we got eaten to death by midges.
Yeah. That would definitely. Well, you don't have to worry about any of that this time because now you're playing in the brand new 10,000-seat arena that was just opened here in November. So you're one of the first bands to ever play here, and we're excited to have you coming back.
That's right.
Particularly me, since I've always been such a big fan of your music. So. Let's talk first about the new record, which came out in the summer. I don't know if you get a chance to look at the reviews that come in. I reviewed it the week it came out, and I really loved the record. Everybody, when they first heard it, including me, kind of described it as being a bit of a return to a sound that we all grew to know and love from your band. Was that a conscious decision?
It was. It certainly was. Yeah. I kind of. It's a little weird saying going back, you know, because I think after 20 years, what it is like we just are what we are. So it's just a continuation of what we do. I think Slang was an experiment that was absolutely necessary for us because I think we'd have just exploded if we hadn't have done Slang.
Okay.
But what we've done with this record is we just went. I suppose the word is back. It really is to just creating and writing in a very kind of expert kind of way, you know, in a very songwriter way is what we try to do, and that's what we've always tried to do. I don't mean like Carole King or anything like that, but what I mean was within the genre of rock, having really well-structured songs that are dynamics and lots of movement for lots of different things to hold the listener's attention. And that's what we did with Hysteria and to a point Pyromania.
Right.
Pyromania is more in your face. Hysteria is more like, you know, listen to this. And this album was like supposed to be a bit of a cross between the two. Slightly more thought out than Pyromania. Slightly less sugary than say Hysteria was. A bit more beef to it. So yeah, from a songwriting point of view, we really tried to, you know, we reintroduced the big harmonies and we reintroduced the big production and just that whole way we structure our songs so that there's a lot of dynamic there and just the actual content of every song on the record. We tried to make the actual 13 pieces of music on there as varied as possible within the hour that you're listening to it.
Right.
Like a greatest hits of anybody is normally called from a 10-year period or so. There's going to be a lot of variety on it. We try to do that with a brand new record. Consequently, you get your Paper Son, Back in Your Face, To Be Alive, Guilty, you know, they're all different.
Yes.
There's a thread because it's us, like there'd be a thread for any band. But we didn't want to make an album that was like an AC/DC album or something where it's just pretty much full on all the way. We wanted it to have a lot of, which is fine
right.
and great for them, but for us, we've always tried to maintain their kind of energy on that kind of song, but still be able to do We Are the Champions by Queen, you know what I mean, or a ballad or something like that, and mix the two together. You know, it's a part Queen, part AC/DC, if you like, you know, something that's got humour and drama to it, and then something that's full on. And that's what we try to do. So, you know, there is obviously familiarity. I mean, we kind of knew that when we put Promises on radio, it was either going to be people going, "Oh, thank God for that," you know, this sounds like, you know, back to the old days, or they were going to hate it because they wanted more of Slang, you know.
Right.
And we kind of knew from the response that we got from Slang that nobody really wanted that again. I mean, I think, you know, we all collectively stand by Slang as a great album, but we obviously just weren't allowed to the way that U2 or REM were to do the 360 or the Bowie or whoever. You know, we're just one of those bands that people want more of the same, you know. It's a very strange thing being in a band because, you know, you've got people on one side saying, oh, don't make the same record again, and then you don't, and then they say, they should have just done the same thing to us.
Yeah.
It's really weird, you know, so you can only follow your own heart, which is why we made Slang, and which is why we probably shocked the shit out of a lot of people. But,
well, I mean,
it was something that we had to do, you know, because it was the mid-90s, our music was dead and buried in the water, and it was either, you know, it was either move on or die, you know.
Do you feel that this is, you know, I mean, this record is a gold record, and you know, Promises was a big modern rock hit on rock radio.
It was indeed, wasn't it?
It's a comeback, so to speak. You don't want to use a comeback for a band that never went away and that never broke up and that, you know, was always on radio anyway. I mean, you listen to classic rock radio now, and it's interesting for me, somebody who grew up with your band, to hear stuff from Pyromania sandwiched in between, you know, a Zeppelin and a Boston song.
You know, that's strange, because I don't hear as much on classic rock.
Yeah.
You know,
it is here.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I guess it just depends which part of the country you're in. You know,
right.
There's a station up in Michigan where my girlfriend lives, and they call themselves a classic rock station. They wouldn't play us if the last record on earth was really bad, and it was Def Leppard record. You know, their version of classic rock is Bowie, Suffragette City, followed by We're American Band by Grand Funk, followed by Zeppelin, followed by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They don't touch anything from the 80s unless it's the Police or Springsteen. So, you know, I suppose it all depends where you are, you know. I hear us on active rock. I don't mean the active rock as in Kid Rock, Bush, blah, 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 but more 3 for 1 Ode to New or something like that.
Right.
But, you know, with the Euphoria album, we really did make a conscious effort to actually be Def Leppard. And what I mean by that is, like, we're not embarrassed or you know, ashamed to be Def Leppard. We weren't in 1995 either, 96 when we were doing Slang, but we were aware that a lot of people were. You know, they were like, oh, I can't play them anymore. I mean, when we work it out on radio in this one station in Florida, the DJ actually said, this is great, I'd play it if they changed their name. I mean, with that kind of bigotry, I don't know how are you supposed to get, you know, what do you do? You know, where do you go with that kind of attitude?
Yeah,
you know?
that's such a strange thing.
It's incredibly horrible, to be quite honest. I don't really think that it ever happened when Zeppelin went through their phase that we just went through. Or any band that's, you know, Aerosmith. I bet that didn't happen. You know, it was very strange. I mean, I think it's a one-off situation because we're pretty much one of the only survivors from the 80s. And I think the 80s is the first actual decade where people actually got vicious towards bands.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it really happened so much overnight. You know, there was that backlash, which does seem to be over.
I think it's over now. I think what it is basically when the Seattle scene kicked in, when your Pearl Jams and your Nirvanas came along, it was America's version of punk rock, or the actual industry acceptance of it was very much mirror imaged to what happened when the Pistols and the Clash came out in '76, which didn't really affect the States.
Right.
But it just blew England out of the water. It made front page news when Johnny Rotten or Sid Vicious did something. It was like when the Stones got arrested for pissing behind a petrol station. It was, you know, every magazine, every band was over as soon as the Pistols and the Clash came out. Forget Purple and Zeppelin and all that lot. It was over. It was over for you Supertramps and all this kind of stuff. And that didn't happen in America. You know, it's like it was a kind of a curious, have a quick peek round the corner at what's going on. You know, what's all the fuss about? Kind of the same way that with Oasis, really. They didn't really break huge in the States, but they like phenomenal in England. They could play 200,000 people at one gig.
Right.
You know, but this is the first time in America that it actually got vicious. Everybody always wanted each other to succeed. When we first came to America, we opened up for like people like Nugent, Pat Travis, Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne. They all helped us. You know, they all wanted us to succeed. And come the end of the 80s, bands actually wanted bands to fail. People wanted bands to fail, you know, and I always find that a little bizarre because I always thought it was us against them.
Yeah, right.
Each other. You know what I mean? You know.
I remember that. Totally.
It's supposed to be anti-establishment. I mean, it's nothing shocking anymore. I mean, come on, you know. I mean, I'm 40 now, and I know that this is not going to make any sense to a 16-year-old. But when I see Marilyn Manson, I just see a lad insane acting like Alice Cooper.
Right.
You know, it was probably shocking when Alice Cooper did it, but because I was 12, no doubt there was a 40-year-old that could find somebody somewhere that once used to set his head on fire in the 50s. You know what I mean? But once it goes nationwide via radio and telly, it's pretty much the first time it ever happens. And it's hard. You know, every generation gets angrier and heavier. And I think that's basically what happened. I think the 80s did actually eat itself to a point. The sad thing was that our sound got burnt out on our behalf by other bands.
You copied it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've said many times before, we can hardly be accused of flooding the market with our, whatever you want to call it, commercial pop rock. Well, we did 3 albums in 9 years.
Right.
It was everybody else that made Kurt Cobain angry. I think he could have probably coped with Def Leppard, he just couldn't cope with 20 of us. That was the problem, you know. And that seems to have gone away. That whole thing seems to have disappeared. And, you know, we just did, last summer in June, we did a couple of festivals, one in Michigan, one down in Florida, where we were playing with the likes of Orgy, Everclear, Hole, and I've done TV shows with people like Lit, and I've met people in bars, and they've all been coming up saying, you guys are great, which they wouldn't have said 4 years ago.
Well,
the press officer wouldn't have allowed them, or it just wasn't cool.
See,
now all of a sudden these bands are saying they actually did grow up on Def Leppard and that they actually do like us, but they don't make music like us.
I was different during that time, Joe, because I was writing for the paper during that time, and I was one of the few writers probably in the country that was saying, yeah, some of this sound music's okay, but these bands are so boring. You know? I mean, live. There was nothing, and I was one of the people that was sort of writing about where is the showmanship and the
absolutely
charisma of the...
That's what we've been saying for the year, you know, give me David Lee Roth any day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of my favourite bands on record is Live.
Oh, yeah.
When I bought Throwing Copper, I heard I Alone on the radio, and I actually pulled the car over and waited till the DJ said who it was so I could drive straight to Sam Goody and buy it. I went to see them live, and they were the most boring band I have ever seen in concert. Unbelievably stagnant. It was like watching a sound check. And I thought, their music is so exciting on record. How can they be so tentative and so... I don't want to use the word shy, but that's what it came across like. Maybe they were just too big too quick, because they were playing like 19,000 people in LA.
Right.
And it just like, you know, they didn't have enough material, and it wasn't Van Halen. And I know that, you know, they could read this and go, well, it's not supposed to be. And I know that, but, you know, even Eddie Vedder used to climb along the bottom of the balconies, and Kurt Cobain used to throw himself into the drum kit. I mean, there was something going on.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like an extension of what Hendrix used to do or something. I just can't get off on any of these bands that just stand there staring at their feet. It's not the way to communicate with a crowd unless we just went through a generation of shoe starers. Which maybe we did, you know. Maybe they've now decided that, you know, their neck muscles do work, and let's get their head up and see what happens.
What was it like for you guys to work with Mutt Lange again? I mean, I know you brought him in for 3 songs.
Yeah, we hadn't worked with Mutt since like 91.
Right.
So, but you never forget. It's like riding a bike. So, you get back on and you know how to you know how to pedal. It was great. It really was, and it was necessary as well, because we had these 3. Well, we thought these 2 songs that we'd taken as far as we could take them, and we were really like stuck on. You know, we tried loads of different things, and they just weren't quite magic. Whereas we thought we'd got everything covered with your Demolition Mans and your Paper Sons and, you know, To Be Alive and all this kind of stuff. And we had Promises and All Night, or what turned out to be Promises and All Night, and we just couldn't get them right. And so we asked Mo if he'd come over and help us, because we really needed it on those songs, you know. And while we were doing those two, he heard well, it was actually a demo of It's Only Love. And he said, "You're mad if you don't put this on the record." And it was me that said, "Well, you know, I like the chorus, but I don't like the lyrics on the verse." So when Mutt went home, we actually rewrote the lyrics over a fax machine.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, it's at my insistence as well, because he was saying, "It's fine," you know. I said, "No, come on, we could write better than this." And, but on the other stuff, he'd be the one pushing me, you know, saying, "No, these lyrics aren't good enough," you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just, you know, when you're working with Mutt, it's a case of you meet the happy medium in the middle. But you take on board everything he says, because the guy's a bloody genius. I mean, how many producers can we name on one finger that can go from AC/DC to Shania Twain, and they both sell 14 million?
The Cars.
You know, and in between, Foreigner Cars, Bryan Adams, Billy Ocean, Backstreet Boys.
Well, I got to tell you something, Joe, and this is the best part of my job, is when I get to talk to people like you and tell you a story like this. I remember there's like defining moments in your life when you listen to music, and I was in 10th grade when Pyromania came out, and a kid brought it on the bus, the school bus, on a boombox, and it was just one of those things where I can remember listening to the drum sound and the guitar sound, and not knowing much about music at the time, other than I never heard anything like it before. Other than that, I never heard something so powerful coming out of a boombox on a school bus that just blew me away. You know, Rock of Ages.
Right.
And
well, when we made that record, Mutt actually sat us down, and this was after we'd done High and Dry, which was, you know,
I love that album.
It was a good record.
Oh, it's a classic.
You know, and
don't sell yourself short.
No, but it was a good record, but it was very much in the vein of the way that Mutt produced, say, Highway to Hell or Black and Black. It was dynamic within a rock sense, but it was pretty much one-dimensional. And when we came to do Pyromania, all this new technology had just kind of come out while we were on tour. You know, in the year between 1981 and 82, a lot of new technology had come along. And Mutt actually sat us down and he says, "When we come to make this record," I mean, we'd written the songs, we'd spent a month in pre-production writing the songs, and we were really happy with all the songs. When we came to recording it, he said, "There's two things we can do here. We can make another High and Dry, or we can spend a bit more time, money and effort and make a record that nobody else has ever made." And we all looked at each other and we were like, you got to remember, we were like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And we were like really excited at the prospect of doing this, but absolutely clueless on how to do it.
Yeah.
But with his guidance, we had total faith. We placed our career 100% in his hands on that record. And because he believed between the six of us that we could do it, you know. He had that much belief in us, and we had that much belief in him.
It was something. I mean, everybody my age at the time who were into rock music, you know, noticed. I can remember having conversations with kids like, "Listen to those drums, listen to those guitars, listen to those vocals, listen to those choruses. There's nothing like it. There's no record to compare it to."
That's what we had set out to do,
Yeah,
you know,
did it.
and it's always going to make a bigger splash when it's the first time it happens.
One of my favorite Leppard records is Adrenalize. There's a song on that album called Tonight,
Right.
which is, I think, one of your best songs.
Yeah, it was going to be the first single, believe it or not, but we were so adamant and not going with a ballad first, that probably killed that song. You know, because it was like Let's Get Rocked was the obvious one, which was very cheesy, you know, intentionally tongue-in-cheek, and probably, to a point, put a lot of hard rock fans off us because it wasn't hard rock. But Tonight, as a song, is probably one of the best things that we've ever done. It's just a real shame it never got a chance to be Love Bites or Do What Love Bites did, or Bring On the Heartbreak, you know.
Stand Up is also a great song.
Yeah, there's a lot of great songs on that album, but they kind of got hidden. I mean, in fairness, Have You Ever was quite a big hit, but they got hidden behind the sugary sweetness of, you know, Make Love Like a Man and Let's Get Rocked, which were kind of silly songs, really. But at the time, we really didn't give a shit, you know, because we wanted to be as diverse as... We didn't want to be as one-dimensional as AC/DC, as much as we love them. We wanted to be more like Queen, who could do Brighton Rock, Now I'm Here, and bring back Leroy Brown on the same record. You know, when they did like Sheer Heart Attack, it was such... I mean, they did vaudeville and blatant metal on one record. It was like just that variety was something that always appealed to us. It's a very Englishness, I've got to admit.
Yeah.
It's a very English thing. It's like Bowie. How can he go from Hunky Dory to Ziggy Stardust? I mean, it was bizarre that you can go from an acoustic folk record almost to basically the beginnings of glam in less than a year. You know, I mean, it was that's something that's in our DNA from what we grew up listening to.
Look at the Beatles did from like Rubber Soul to Sgt. Pepper's. You know,
Absolutely.
Just the British guys as well.
And when you look at
the Zeppelin records.
Yeah, you think about the Beatles' career, their entire catalogue spreads out over 8 years.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, come on. And they went from Love Me Do to, you know, Revolution and stuff like that. It's phenomenal, really.
You just reminded me of a story when you were talking about Queen, which I guess I always appreciate you as a person a little bit more. I read an interview with Brian May a couple of years ago, and it was after the Freddie Mercury tribute show at Wembley. And he said that he was running around all day, making sure everything was going right, sort of, and he was jamming with a bunch of bands, and he was really worked up over the whole thing. And he said at one point, you pulled him aside and pointed out to the crowd, and everybody was singing Queen songs. And you're one of the, and you told them to take a minute and take it all in.
Yeah, I did. He was after we'd finished. He got up and played with us, and I think he might have played with GNR or whatever. But I mean, he really was. I mean, it was Roger Taylor organised it all. But once he got there, Brian was totally like playing mother, you know.
Yeah.
And after they did the Lisa Minnelli thing with We Are the Champions, he was just going to walk off stage, and I was dragging him back by his hair.
Yeah.
I'm saying, Brian, check it out. There's 1.5 million on TV and 72,000 people out there. You'll never see this again. You know, it was one of those moments where it's like, I really did feel that they'd achieved so much in their career that he deserved, as all of them did, to take one long last look at this and really soak it up and fuck what anybody thinks.
That was a nice thing for you to do, Joe.
You know, it's because they deserved it, you know, I mean, that's the way, I mean, I'm very passionate about my music, and everybody else's as well. I mean, I can be as big a bitch as anybody. I mean, I can talk your ears off how much I hate the fucking Chili Peppers, purely just because they hate us. But I don't like to linger on those kind of things.
Right.
I'm very much into, like, doesn't matter what they are, whether it's Joni Mitchell or Kid Rock, walking up to them and going, hey, respect, you know, and buying them a drink and sitting at the bar and chatting with them, no matter where they're from. But with Queen, you know, we've been with these guys since we were 11, 12 years old.
Right.
You know, they were our heroes, and then all of a sudden they were our buddies. You know, well, not all of a sudden, but over a period of time. And then, you know, they asked us to do the Freddie Mercury thing. When there were other people begging to go on it, they actually asked us if we'd do it. I mean, how flattered can you be? You know?
Right.
And Brian, he's a friend of, he's been a friend for almost a lifelong friend. I mean, since he first introduced himself to us when we were opening up for Rainbow in Europe in '81.
Wow.
And he just came in the dressing room, as humble as anybody could possibly be, and go, hi, I'm Brian May. We're like, no shit. You know. It was, you know, but it just felt very natural to do something like that. And it's nice that he even remembered that it was, you know, that he did it, to be quite honest, because I didn't even know that he'd ever talked about it.
No, I read somewhere where he, in an interview where he mentioned you and you had done that, and that always stuck out in my mind as something that was a cool thing for you to do.
I would do it again, you know. I mean, I would hope one day. To me, that is a byproduct of Ted Nugent, Judas Priest, Ozzy Osbourne, Pat Travers, Sammy Hagar, AC/DC, to a lesser extent Blackfoot and Billy Squire, all not being bastards to us when we were coming up,
Right.
and passing something on to the next generation. That's what they did to us, and it instilled in us that when we take a support act out, that we look after them. And if they ask a question, I mean, my best advice to an artist is don't ask for advice. But if somebody, you know, actually take the time to sit and rap with them if they've got a problem or something like that, you know, just not just, fucking figure it out for yourself, you know. Or just, you can't have any lights and you can't stand on the stage, and if you do this and that, you know, you'll be fired and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we had problems once with a band called Crocus, but that was only because the singer was literally stealing every line I said. It's like, look, can't you just think of your own fucking raps?
I remember those guys.
But, Carcass we used to call it. But, yeah, that is a byproduct of that. It's just that, it's caring and loving your fellow musicians, you know, and having respect for them. And I have respect for people that have respect for us. And to a point, I have respect for somebody that doesn't even like Def Leppard. But, you know, I met Iggy Pop the other day in Dublin, and he was all, you know, I walked in, I know his guitarist Whitey, and I walked into his room, and he was there, and he came all bushy-eyed when I walked in, and he grabbed my hand and shook it with both hands and said, hey, respect, respect. I know damn well that Iggy Pop does never ever fucking listen to a Def Leppard record, doesn't own one, never would, and probably hates us, but respects what we've done. That meant so much more to me than somebody just falling over me and pretending that they know us.
That's cool.
I thought it was very neat, and that's the way that I always thought it was. There was a sticky period in the 90s where there was like, kill, kill, kill. I didn't get it, you know. It's like, does it bother you that much that we exist? I mean, well, just get a life and just ignore it.
Yeah.
I don't like something, I just leave it alone.
Well, you said I've read a recent interview with you where you said, you know, you always from the get-go wanted to be a band like the Stones, and here you are in your 22nd year.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, you were just kids, obviously, in the beginning, but your first record came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself going in the future?
Well, I think realistically, you've got to say that the majority of our career is behind us. But that doesn't mean to say we're about to split up when this tour's over. You know, I mean, I can only take my lead off the Stones and Aerosmith when it comes to bands, because I can't think of any other. I'm sure there are some out there that are still doing it at that level. I mean, I don't want Def Leppard to turn into Fogat.
Right.
You know, I just wish that there was less stigma attached to bands that are still around compared to solo artists. I have this real bugbear, and it's media-driven thing. Nobody ever criticizes a Tom Petty or a David Bowie for being around. They'll criticize the record if they don't like it. If you're Billy Idol or Bowie or, I mean, you name them, Joni Mitchell, Tom Petty, Neil Young, they can be around since when I was at baby school.
Yeah, right.
And they're okay. We've only been around for 20 years, and it's not okay for a band. You know, it's like, are we supposed to like grow up and split up and go off and do your own thing? And the Stones outlived that, Aerosmith have outlived that, and I'm sure there's something I can't think of right now that's outlived it. We will take our lead off them, and consequently, if Aerosmith are at least 12, 15 years older than us,
right,
and the Stones the same, if not more, can still be doing this and at least feel meaningful to themselves, so that some of that will pass on to a certain amount of the audience, then we still do have a hell of a long time to go. We could still have more time left than some bands that are just starting out now will split before we do.
Oh, sure.
We may still be around. We may be around longer than Kid Rock.
Oh, sure.
We certainly outlived most of the Seattle artists.
Right.
Alice in Chains don't seem to be doing anything. Soundgarden split. Nirvana imploded. Pearl Jam seemed to be spiraling nowhere.
Yeah, well, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with not going on tour during their prime.
Yeah, well, you know,
the kids would have. I criticized them for that too. I said, you know, I was a kid in the '80s. We went to see bands, you know, I don't give a shit about the $2 for the service charge. I mean, it was.
I mean, basically, you're doing a disservice by trying to be good guys.
Yeah, because
you're actually doing nobody any good.
Let's
play on an aircraft carrier.
Let's play
on a runway.
Yeah.
Nobody can find the bloody thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's silly, you know, and that whole thing about, well, I don't want to be successful. Hey, we'll go back to pumping gas. You know, that's my theory there. It's like you want to be, if you're in a band, accept what there is. You can't change the fucking rules. You can try, you'll always fail. You know, there's very few. I mean, I'm sure Eddie Vedder will go to his grave thinking that he changed the world a little bit. Maybe he did. But there are kids all over the States that will be saying, yeah, I never got to see him.
Right.
Great records, but I never got to see him. They can't say that about us. If they never came to see us, they had the choice to do so.
Sure.
Because we always made ourselves available. It's work. It's your prerogative to actually put yourself on display if people want to see it. If you make a record, there is a certain amount of people that want to come and see you live. It's your job to perform for them. That's what it is, you know. We don't suffer from that artist anxiety, Mark. We understand our role in life and we love it. And we get on with it. And I think that's why we do have a certain respect within the industry for doing what we do, you know, and always trying to put the best show on. We very rarely have great shows or, you know, classically brilliant, absolutely over-the-top, fantastic shows, because we try and make every show that way. We don't peak and fall. I mean, obviously, by the nature of the beast, you'll have some that are better than others.
Right.
But we never go out there with the intention of one being better than, like, oh, we have to be great tonight because
you're in New York, or
it's like we have to be great because we're in Boise, Idaho, or Wilkes-Barre, or, you know, Belfast. You know, it doesn't have to be LA and New York for it to be a classic show. In fact, you know, 9 times out of 10 they'll be the worst ones. The supposedly least important ones are always your best shows. With us, it's a case of like every night is an event, you know. It has to be, because it may be some people's only chance to get to see you. No matter how many times you come through town, maybe they couldn't get a babysitter, maybe their parents would let them out, maybe they had to work, maybe they couldn't get time off, you know. And so when people come, you don't want to just be going through the motions. And we've never gone through the motions. I'm not saying we've never had a bad show by any means, but we've never intentionally gone out there to just say, oh, let's just get through this next hour and a half and fuck them, you know.
Right.
That's not our style, and I think it rubs off. I think it shows all the way through. You can tell with the new album, it's not just been shambolically put together, because as much thought went into that record as went into Hysteria. We just managed to record it a lot quicker, because, you know, we learned how to do it after all this time.
Joe, I really appreciate your time today. This is going to run in the paper before the show, and I'm going to try and get back and hand you a copy of it.
I'd like to read a copy of it.
Yeah, you know, I've always been a fan, and it'd be a pleasure to meet you.
Well, why don't you make a point of it? I mean, you know our local rep, I guess.
Well, I know Laura Murphy over at Mercury and everybody
Brilliant.
pretty well, so hopefully, well, not Mercury anymore, whatever it's called this year. Island.
Seagram's.
Seagram's. But
talk to Lauren and make sure you get yourself on the guest list. I would do it right now, but I checked into this hotel at 5 o'clock this morning. I'm checking out in 25 minutes. I didn't even bring my bags off the bus.
No problem, Joe. I'll take care of it.
Paperless, and everythingless. If you can take care of that yourself with Lauren, I'd love to shake you out and buy you a beer.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
Give